This is really a question for a HDR student. So I really would see that taking advice from their supervisor is the most important thing, and I would hope that their supervisor is guiding them to the journal that's most appropriate for that research. Coming in as a HDR researcher who hasn't published before, it's such a mystery, all of these things. So having someone to mentor and guide you, and that might be your supervisor, and if your supervisor isn't very experienced that way, then I would encourage you to connect up with someone who is experienced. It's so much easier to publish in high quality journals once you've already published in high quality journals. When you're doing it for the first time, what they're looking for, obviously every research project is different, but quality, rigorous methods, good quality writing, comprehensive, innovative, all of these things, and a lot of those decisions don't come just as you're putting pen to paper. They come back in the early phases when you design the research. So.
Write a bit every day. Just write 100 words, write 200 words, write something every day. And you will continue to learn to write your whole career. I don't think I know anybody who, has developed such writing skills that it just comes automatically to them. Of course, we improve over time, but it is a continual learning activity, I think.
I would say if you're publishing your first paper, you want to you don't want to rush that first paper out too fast. It's important to publish, but I also think it's important to publish work that you're proud of and that you're willing to stand behind, because that paper is going to be out there for years. I think sometimes ECRs just want to publish anything, anywhere, and I understand that, but I'm really pleased that my first paper is one that I'm really proud of. Sometimes I think it might be the best paper I've published. I hope that's not true, but I am very proud of that paper, and I think what goes along with that is placing it in a place that matters, where it's going to make an impact, where it's going to reach readers, where it's going to get a thorough peer review that's going to make it a stronger piece of work, rather than just sailing through and so that you can have something on your CV.
It will take longer than you think it will to get to a final draft stage, for sure. I remember having a conversation with a student once who was shocked that even as a fairly experienced researcher, I might write 10, 15 drafts of a paper before I got to a point where I had a final draft that I was happy to submit. And that includes going back and forth with co-authors, get as many different views as possible on your paper, find as many people who would be willing to review it for you as possible, because the quality and the usefulness of your science is only as good as the way in which you communicate it. And if you can't communicate your ideas and your outcomes, then it's going to be very hard for people to take your research on board and use it.
Read the author guidelines very carefully and follow it step by step. The title, I'm also an editor on Women and Birth, and the title is really important in that the first thing an editor will read is the title, and if it fits the journal, then they will go on to read the abstract. The abstract also needs to really represent what your paper is about, and be interesting, and then follow the guidelines. And if there's any checklist that you need to use, depending on the type of paper, a qualitative paper or a quantitative paper, is it a cohort study? Is it a systematic review? What kind of paper is it? Do the checklist, make sure you've included everything.
I think to make sure you have very thick skin, because the reviews that come back are not always kind, and just to expect that, I guess. So even if they are kind, it's not unusual to be rejected from a journal. And so make sure that you have a realistic expectation of what kinds of comments you might get back, and the fact that you are going to receive feedback, and some of it will be negative on the work that you're studying or that you're putting forward. So I would also recommend making sure that somebody else who's perhaps not intricately associated with the study is able to read through the paper before you submit it, because sometimes the methods you think are clear and that people will understand what you have done, But if you are looking at it for the first time, you can't actually follow what the person has done. And I think the methods can be a very important component of the paper, and the reviewers need to understand what you have done to interpret whether or not the paper is worthy of being published. And so get someone else to have a read through it if you can, and they can then say, well, this part didn't make sense, or I couldn't follow what you did in this section of the methods, for example.
You know, trying to publish your first paper is like a really nerve-wracking, hard process, and hopefully, I guess, you'll have somebody guiding you through that process. So whether it's like your PhD supervisor or, you know, a supervisor through your work, somebody higher in your lab, like that's something that will definitely help the process along. I think, yeah, scoping out a couple of options for journals. Like I always have, when I'm writing a paper, I'll have a table just on the front page. Obviously, I don't submit this to the journal, but I'll have a couple of journal options on there with their impact factors and if they've got like open access fees or whatever associated with them, so that, you know, like if the first one gets knocked off, then I already know where I'm going to send it next. So I think that's important. I think having like, if you're publishing with a group of people more experienced than you, like that can be really valuable and they can help guide you through that process. And I think particularly when you get your paper reviewed and the comments come back for you to address, like I guess try to remember that it's not personal. It's how we do science and how we improve our knowledge is by critically commenting on other people's work, and that's what improves your papers in the end. So I'd say, particularly if it's your first paper, like have a go, but try and keep the comments at arm's length kind of thing. And remember, it's not a reflection really on you. It's more, you know, a reflection on a little bit of whoever's done the review, but also just trying to improve your work, as most peer reviewers will try to do. But yeah, getting advice from your supervisor and your other co-authors to address those comments. Don't feel you're alone, because they'll have lots of experience in replying to reviewers.